Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a super guide for heroic Chromaggus. Now, Chromaggus is on the very difficult side. He floods you with these spells that are quite punishing, that either keep doing damage to you every turn, or give him cheap minions or cheap spells, and they accumulate in your hand, so, if they stay in your hand multiple turns, he gets the benefit for multiple turns. The decks against him, the common themes and tools you'll use are ways to make those spells cheaper so you can get them out of your hand quicker. So things like Thaurissan, Radiant Elemental, Sorcerer's Apprentice are great. Tools for healing a lot, because you'll usually get stuck with spells that keep doing 3 damage to you, so either getting out Molten Giants as a result to benefit from it, and then things like heal bots, and in more modern decks, things like Reno to restore you to full health. And then you also need to deal with his chromatic dragonkin that often come out at the beginning. Those are minions that gain a lot of stats if you play spells. And that's punishing because you want to play spells to get these spells he gives you out of your hand. So you'll also put in tools to help you deal with those minions early on. And the last thing I'll add is that the one nice thing about Chromaggus is that once you get ahead, once you've stabilized, then his spells start doing very little, because you'll usually have full 10 mana. If he gives you one spell, you just play it out and still have 7 mana to spend per turn, and if you're ahead on board, that should be enough. Often for a long time while you're working to get board control, you can let your hand fill up with the spells that restore health to him at the beginning of every turn, because they just, while you're fighting for board control, they're not really going to benefit him anyway. So you often sort of in these games reach a stage where you've stabilized, eventually have board control, get rid of the bad spells, eventually have board control and so much mana you can then start getting rid of all the spells that are healing him, and then actually start going face and make the push to win. Now let's look at some specific decks. First off, we have Druid, and Druid has the nice additional strategy you can use more than other classes of trying to ramp up very quickly so that you can just have a ton of mana early on to be able to, when it's his turn 3, you're on turn 6, so you actually can play one of his spells out, but still have the mana to keep pace with him by playing a 3-drop when he's playing a 3-drop. Now this deck was back in the time, so there were fewer ramp tools. Nowadays you can add in more, so it does use things like Grove Tender, which you never see anymore. Wild Growth is the obvious one. Nourish, if you can nourish, that'll help a lot. You gain a ton of mana and can really be ahead enough to keep pace and be getting rid of his afflictions. And we have Innovate to spike out something good early. We have some nice durable taunts like Sunwalker and Ancient of War and Druid of the Claw. Big Game Hunter for some of his later threats he puts out, like Alexstrasza and Onyxia, I believe. Swipe to help you deal with those, and your usual utility cards like Shredder. Ancient of Law at the time drew you 2. Nowadays you'd probably put in Ultimate Infestations. Chromaggus to help you draw extra cards, and it's just kind of funny to play Chromaggus against Chromaggus. Foe Reaper, once you're ahead, can just do a lot of clearing out, and the AI doesn't play around it particularly well. And one Tree of Life, even back then, sort of acted as your Reno in the deck, where if you're low on life, you've been taking 3 damage from his spells and early tempo, it gives you an opportunity to just reset to full health, and from that point you should probably have it. The Hunter deck I played back in the day was very defensive. You'll see Hunter's Marks to help you kill things, and a lot of AoE like Explosive Sheeps, Abominations, Unleash the Hounds, which you can use, an Explosive Trap. Basically a lot of AoE, because often as you're getting rid of his spells, he will flood the board with a lot of minions, because you can't keep up tempo-wise if you're getting rid of the spells. And then eventually when you do get very low on life, you can get out Molten Giants if you've drawn luckily enough, taunt them up with Sun Furies, and then have a defensive lineup from which you start to stabilize and sort of counter-punch him. Thaurissan's good for cheapening all the spells in your hand, so you can then get out a lot of spells at once. Heal bots for healing after you do get low, and Gozrilla to be able to build up for the final kill potentially once you have stabilized. Once we get into the realm of modern decks, we have a critical tool in the form of one Reno Jackson, who we find down here. His ability to heal you back up to full justifies doing a one-of deck that gives you a lot of varied tools. Doomsayers for early board clear, Arcanologist and Mad Scientist to get into your secrets of Ice Barrier and Ice Block that help give you more life, and Counterspell to just proactively, if you get this out for free from a Mad Scientist, can really help tempo-wise. Sorcerer's Apprentice to help you play stuff out for cheaper. A lot of utility stuff, draw things obviously like Acolyte of Pain and Arcane. No Arcane Intellect, that's actually surprising to me. Saboteur is a nice addition to a lot of heroic decks in that you just slow him down a lot for one turn by having to spend like a full 5 mana on his hero power. Means he does nothing else that turn and gives you a big opportunity to stabilize. Obviously AoE in the form of things like Volcanic Potion, Meteor is effectively AoE, Flame Strike, Thaurissan again to make your spells cheaper, Polymorph to be able to deal with a big threat. Animated Armor is a nice thing if you have a bunch of these spells in your hand which deal 3 damage. They only deal 1 damage and can help you stabilize. Echo of Medivh to get a duplicate of something like a Chromaggus or Molten Giant or Alexstrasza can pretty much be game winning. We also throw in an Animalis for sort of the like emergency board clear, especially if you have an ice block up. And then boom, good utility, Inkmaster Solia goes with a spell getting for free. I really think there should be an Arcane Intellect here to speed up your card draw though. But yeah, this is the, whenever you play these one-of decks, the consistency is a bit all over the place in that you kind of need to draw more conditional things at the right time, but it's really powerful if you draw well, and essentially if you can stabilize, then Reno, you should have pretty much a lock on the game. In the case of Paladin, again in modern times, it's a very hodgepodge deck. We have a few themes going on. One is a lot of healing. Forbidden Healing, just so amazing. The ability to sort of like heal for 20 in a turn if you've got it low is game breaking. If that's sort of the main cost you've paid for taking on his secrets. Tyrion's just so good, and we have, that we basically N'Zoth just for the Tyrion. Because, you get a 5/7 and another 8/8, that's a taunt, and that gives you a weapon, etc. Just too good. Molten Giants, because you will get low on life. Alexstrasza to help you heal. 1 heal bot to give you even more healing. So there's a ton of healing, and then there's just utilities to help clear his board. Between Doomsayers, Equality, Wild Pyro, Consecrations, True Silver, Spikeridge Steed, just always good value to get that out on something. And last but not least, we actually play the Mysterious Challenger package to just be able to get a ton of tempo at once, where you put this on the board, and then that should buy you essentially a bit of bide you time on his board to then be able to play some of the Afflictions out. The Priest deck I used continues in a similar vein, a lot of healing between Binding Heals, Mistress of Mixtures, Power Word Glory to stick on one of his minions. And then we have heal bots and an Alexstrasza. We also have some really good board clears in Wild Priest. Light Bomb, very powerful because he often has big boards, but they're usually often not resilient to Light Bomb. Peotris as a late game finisher, once you've stabilized, this gives you, and if he can't clear this, it gives you a potential stream of legendaries which can close out the game. Molten Giants, your perennial tool for just getting out big threats as a sort of reward for being so low on life. In the case of Rogue, your healing is not as great, but we stick in a Reno in a deck which has a lot of 2-ofs, but the goal, it's not a full deck of 2-ofs. The goal is that just once you get to your late game, you can eventually play him as a sort of last resort. You might be on 4 health and hoping he doesn't draw the Afflictions that do 3 damage to you. Eventually, once you've cleared your remaining deck of duplicates, you can then Reno, get back up to full life, and you're safe. You do have the heal bots as utilities to sort of bide you along the way. Obviously, you have the usual board clears like Doomsayer, very good. 1 Emerald Hive Queen just to help you a lot with those early Chromatic Dragon King. So important. It's also why we run a lot of, we saw Explosive Sheeps in a bunch of other decks. SI7, great utility. Prep to be able to get out good spells like Vanish can just like, if you're way behind on board, that can like, you know, prep Vanish, reset the board, then play another of his afflictions out, and you can stabilize as he then has to spend his mana again to play back some of the minions. You also have, in terms of finishes, the Molten Giant's always good as big threats once you get low on life, and Blade of Cthulhu's can just instantly spike his big threats like Alexstrasza and build up your Cthulhu to just take advantage of the board when you finally get him out. Reno also made a little more effective by the fact that you can use your Gadget Zones and some of these cheap spells to cycle through your deck more quickly to get rid of some of the duplicates. In the case of Shaman, a lot of similar tools in terms of healing and board clears, and Volatile Elemental is another good sort of counter early on to Chromatic Dragon King. We also have exceptional healing in the form of Healing Wave, especially since there are a decent chunk of heavy minions in your deck, even though there are a few cheap ones. We put some effort into the Jade package because of their ability to snowball as you're sort of maintaining the board early with Jade Claws and Jade Lightnings. Eventually get out an Aya. You will eventually have some big Jade fighters helping and getting you value on that front. Hex and Natural include. Lightning Storm for AoE can pair well with Halaziel to just heal you up a bunch before you get to your bigger heals. Volcanoes to just wipe out his board. Thaurissan as usual to make your spells cheaper. Molten Giants for threats. The other thing I put in a lot of my what's it called? The other thing I put in a lot of my Shaman decks in modern times as I was taking on these heroic bosses is one elemental like Firefly, which generates you a second one so you can hold on to it. Something to be able to prep for Kalimos, because his effects are just so powerful. You'll often want to use it for the heal, but if he floods your board and you don't have another AoE, use it for the AoE. There is a strategy to sort of predict, because you're running so few elementals, you do sort of need to predict, like, oh, I'll probably want to use this next turn, let me get my Firefly out or my Flame Elemental that I got from it the first time. There's very little activators, but it's worth including one of just to get such a powerful effect from it. For Warlock, I went with the adventurous idea of doing the quest, Lakari Sacrifice. So you have a few cards that discard like Soulfire and Doomguard, but ultimately you're reliant on the idea of getting out a big Deathwing turn eventually, which will clear his board and often he's ahead, clear your own hand, which completes the quest and also coincidentally gets rid of those damn afflictions, even though it gets rid of other cards you care about too. And then you have a big presence on the board, can easily be getting rid of one spell at a time as he gives them to you, and continuing to try to recover. It is a Reno 1-of deck, so Reno can also restore you to full health. You have some powerhouses like Sylvanas to help you stabilize on board, AoE like Abyssal Enforcer. Kazakus takes advantage of the 1-of as well to give you some big powerful spell to deal with his board, gain armor, etc. A Molten Giant as always, but really if you can get to that Deathwing turn where you're then not only getting rid of his spells one at a time and playing something, but also getting that eternal stream of 3/2 imps, you're in a pretty good spot. We also play both Corruption and Corrupting Mist and Doomsayers to help you clean the board. I will note that even though it's a 1-of deck, we do have 2-ofs in the form of Doomsayer because it's so important for early board control and getting rid of his Chromatic Dragonkin, and Voidcaller because it's so important to tempo to have that be able to trade with a couple of things, then get another demon out like Doomguard or Mal'Ganis or something big. It's just so critical for keeping up on tempo while you're trying to get rid of those annoying spells. And yeah, we even have stuff like Cruelly Unshackled, another nice thing to take advantage of the fact your deck will eventually run out of duplicates to get a bunch of demons on board, give you the big advantage, which you can eventually recover from with your Healbot and Reno. The Warrior deck we beat him with at the time was relatively simplistic. Warrior has the nice advantage of being able to constantly armor up to deal with the fact that you take a lot of damage. It runs Molten Giants as always to benefit from getting low on health. Clockwork Giant because often his hand is very full because he has such a lot of card draw, and Gorehowl to be able to take down a lot of minions and benefit from your armor gate with things like Shield Block, good weapons at the time like Deathspite, Fiery War Axe, Sun Fury to apply to your Moltons, and then some little AoE tools like Unstable Ghoul to slow him down and deal some damage to his board, one Brawl to essentially be able to reset the board, and Grommash to get a big advantage. So the deck might seem a bit light on threats, that's why we have the extra giants. If you can get a few of those on board, you can go to town on his face pretty quickly. Last of all was the challenge of trying to defeat Chromaggus in all his glorious difficulty with a deck of basic and common cards only. I tried for a while with Druid, thinking its ramp was such a valuable tool, but what I eventually had a lot more luck with was this common priest deck, which you see a screenshot of my victory against him. The Radiant Elementals are key. Getting one or two of those out lets you get a bunch of his afflictions out of your hand quickly, and eventually if you build up something like the Radiant Elemental, as you see in the screenshot, but really it can be any of your minions, you eventually, Velen's chosen them, Power Word Shield, eventually you get off the Divine Spirit in a fire combo after drawing a bunch of cards, then you can just smash him with some big minion. He doesn't have good single target removal, so if you get something very big, you actually have a pretty sizable advantage. Things like Mind Vision and Thought Steal are just because, generally speaking, the power of cards in his deck is higher than yours when you're running like a common-only deck. So it gives you a little bit of reach for some nice tool like Alexstrasza or something like that. You obviously have your like Deaths and Pains to be able to deal with specific targets. The Chromatic Dragon King, even though they grow when you play a spell, you can pain them because it counts that they're, the spell is being applied to them before they gain the +2, so it will still kill them. Spirit Lash is a tool to be able to heal you quite a bit if he does have a big board. In a perfect world, you combine it with something Velen's chosen to be able to do quite a bit of damage to his board, and an Acolyte to be able to draw more consistently to make sure you eventually get to some kind of like double Divine Spirit in a fire combo to be able to take him down. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I managed to defeat heroic Chromaggus from Blackrock Mountain. Very challenging boss with every single class, and even eventually a deck of basic and common cards only. Good luck if you try it out. See you next time.